so we missed the first two, but that's it. We'll keep going. That's good.
Okay, so it's really exciting when you go through these guys and you actually discover somebody who made a watchable movie or had something to say.
Right.
But it's really a thrill when you find somebody that you never heard of before, and the guy is a master, an unknown master. This guy started making Super 8 films when he was 7 years old, and they were good. You know, I've seen a lot of childish movies, but he did animation, clay animation. He would fight with clay animated monsters, and he had a filmic sense that was fully mature by the time he was a teenager. And when he went off to film school, he took the money for that, and he made the first film. And it's as good or better than most of the highly regarded action films of the 70s. The last 30 minutes of this film can stand toe-to-toe with the car chase in French Connection, or you know, the car chase in Bullet from the 60s.
To Live and Die in LA.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing just to discover a guy that didn't really have a career, but could have gone into Hollywood and excelled in any job on films. He could have been an editor. He could have been a cinematographer. He could have been an actor. The guy is just as handsome and athletic and
but now he hires
physically fluid as Stallone,
yeah,
or any of those other, much better than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, yeah.
Just as an action actor, the guy could have made it to the top, but he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to be in other people's films or work on other people's films or even be hired to direct.
But I will say, as a postscript, real quick, Bill, that is what he does now. But they're not in Hollywood. And he's working on the movies like for Unearthed and stuff as a cinematographer, as an actor, maybe for money, but also friendship and, you know.
Oh, yeah, I mean, everybody look at John Cassavetes. He acted in movies to make money, to make his own movies.
Orson Welles.
You know, well, Orson Welles, he's just a big phony. I can't stand him anyway. You know, I mean, he didn't do anything. Everything that people credit Orson Welles with doing, studio guys did. You know, everything that he said was innovative were things that the same guys at the studio were doing before he even showed up. The one thing he did do is he brought in his radio actors and really did some innovations in sound recording and with the actors and stuff. But back to Bebber.
First controversial opinion of the new show. Go ahead, Bill.
Anyway, back to Bebber. The fact that he knows where to put the camera is a big deal to begin with. The very first scene in this movie is his girlfriend, and just in a room, but he dresses the set with a line full of candles. So we know right away that this girlfriend has some connection to the occult. She might even be a witch, but she does have some kind of interest in the occult. When we see his father, all they show is an apartment that's a mess and a couple of bottles. We immediately know that the guy is an abusive drunkard. You know, so just in his minimal dressing of sets, you can see all these things about the characters. And a lot of what seems to me is that a lot of the film is built around what people can do.
Right.
And this is, you know, how the way the classic theater is developed. You know, Shakespeare's plays were written based on what the actors he had could do.
And in films, like where you can shoot.
Yeah.
And who can help you.
Chekhov has a monologue that's 5 pages long in The Seagull. He wrote it for this one special actor. He could do it. If anybody does that play, they've got to cut that monologue down because nobody can pull it off. But he wrote it for that guy. And there's an actor here, or a character, who could really do a good freak out scene.
Mark Pittman.
That scene, what's that?
Mark Pittman.
Yeah. that scene would not be in the movie if it wasn't for that guy.
Yeah, because Jim was basically like, "Hey, this guy's cool, go crazy," and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm going crazy."
and he just went crazy.
And then he becomes one of the main villains in the last, fight. Because I don't think he was intended to be, but there's kind of like some derelict in the band in the gang. But once he showed, I'm a bad motherfucker, it's like, well, you got to see that on camera and being a bad motherfucker.
And one of the main, I mean, this is movie is a lot like Rocky. The guy gets the shit beat out of him, but in the end he prevails. But unlike Rocky, it cost him his life. And that's where an independent filmmaker can do what he wants. Right. You can't do that. You can't do that in a Hollywood movie. You can't have the guy's fingers chopped off and have him chopped and then laying there all bloody and dead at the end. It's
because people would be like, he's a loser, and it's like, well, I think it's a twist on the whole.
No, he won. No, I think people who see the movie know he's a winner. But the Hollywood producers, they would say, right, you can't have the guy losing like this. They would not. But I mean, when Rocky loses, Rocky's victory is only partial. He only went the distance. He didn't win the fight, so he's a loser too. But it's not extreme. We're dealing with an extreme situation, and in these stupid Hollywood movies, it's all a template, and you just got to go from one thing to another. The guy has these, that stupid idea that you got to have a guy want something, and then he has obstacles to overcome, and then he almost gets it, and then he gets screwed up, and finally, and then he's victorious, and it's just nonsense, boring nonsense. But go ahead. With Bebber, he can go in any direction he wants to. This movie is also a lot like Death Wish, but a lot more realistic.
Well, I was gonna say, one thing I like about it. This is one of my favorite tropes in action movies. And it's, of course, extremely unrealistic, but, it fires us up, as in samurai movies, any movie where you've got one guy and there's like a gang. It can be 10 guys, it can be 500. How the fuck is he going to even survive? Much less, boxer from Shentung. I don't know if y'all have seen that. But Alexander Fuxing, he just keeps going. He keeps getting injured. And he's determined to fight all these guys in this tea house to find the corrupt, overlord with like the long mustache and kill him. And that's like his mission. And he doesn't care. He doesn't care how bad he gets hurt. And he is very much like, I forgot the name of that character, very reminiscent of Goose. And then characters like, our man Tatsuya Nakadai in Harakiri, is like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing this till they die or I die, and that's up to how the filmmaker wants it.
What's funny about those martial arts movies, though, is that you've got a guy who's like Bruce Lee or, one of these other guys who's got 100 people all around him, kicks all of their ass, looks like he killed everybody, but actually not dead. And then one guy comes in at the end and beats the shit out of him.
Well, a lot of times in the Shaw Brothers, it'll be a sucker punch. Like he'll be through all that, and then somebody has been sneaking around, and he stabs him in the back with something, and they play with your emotions in the Shaw Brothers movies.
There's a Korean movie that was remade a few years back, which I wouldn't be surprised if I don't remember the name of the director, but whoever directed that, I wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't seen That Bit at Dawn, that Old Boy.
Yeah. Old Boy, that's those scenes in the alleyway.
Yeah. Old Boy, as I was watching That Bit at Dawn, I was thinking, this probably...
And then, of course, Old Boy was, they admitted it. They stole Old Boy's scene, and they put it into the first season of Daredevil on Netflix. And it was so wild to people and such a challenge for the crew to do it in one take that they made a hallway scene in all 3 seasons. And when I was working at this one place, everybody's into Marvel, and they're like,
the comparison. I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say that the reason why I compare to Old Boy is basically the lead character. he's being, he's kind of pretty pathetic in a good way, so to speak, and he gets beat up, but it's almost like he's the little
his will is
train that
indomitable.
could, the little train that could, the little he won't give up, he won't give up, he won't give up.
I love that.
Yeah.
Old Boy is about I'd say my third all-time favorite movie.
Oh, really?
And it's coming to Charlotte soon, but I don't think I'm going to be able to see it, unfortunately. That's another conversation. Marco, so you and I talked a little before the show, and you have some similar and some different viewpoints on the movie. Can you share a few?
I don't want to get beat up, I have to say this, but I had a hard time with some of the acting. So I guess I would disagree with Bill with a few of the points here. But I really loved the last 22, 23 minutes. I agree with him.
Hey, I gotta interrupt. This is a technical directing thing, so we can't see the bottom of your face again. So if you could just.
Okay. So
okay, good.
Trust me, you're better off.
Now they know who to blame for these opinions. No, I'm kidding.
No. Okay, my point is that I really liked the last 25 minutes, but I had a hard time getting emotionally attached to what triggered him in the whole revenge plot. I mean, you guys probably gonna be saying, "Wow, don't you think it's enough to have your girlfriend murdered?" But the way it was shot, I somehow felt detached. I was expecting something more, I wouldn't say gritty, but more emotional, and I thought it was kind of too brief. And then
when she was killed, or when he finds
the way she was killed, it wasn't really they didn't show her suffering too much.
But you see, that defies expectations, because those kind of movies, you always see the woman in detail being just ravaged, and this one they're more like
I thought this was far stronger than, say, the scene where the daughter's raped and killed in Death Wish.
Lester. Oh,
because
really?
that was just straight ahead, like the guys were so disgusting,
right? And
the things they said were so vile that I thought it was just horrible. That didn't that's all that mattered. The focus was on the guys, not on the girl.
I've
never seen a scene like that was that extremely vulgar and ugly. From the
point.
Maybe I spit on your grave, or
we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah. Somehow I felt it was kind of brief, and I think his acting actually at the end gets a lot better than in the beginning. I don't know the order that it was shot, but it seemed kind of like I could understand that he wanted revenge, but I wasn't really emotionally attached. And then I was kind of divided towards the movie, and then the last 25 minutes, it seemed to me like he picked it up. And then
that's valid. It's not every character is going to resonate the same with everybody. I mean,
I think his weakest scenes were the ones that when he was in the scene with the girl.
Well, in a way they're the weakest, but I think they're absolutely mandatory to upend your expectations, because first of all, you expect those things probably, because you're like, oh, well, if he's really going to turn good, then they'll frolic through the flowers and love scenes. So it's kind of insipid and maudlin.
No, his acting was bad, because he was nervous with the girl, and he wasn't directing. When he's with the guys, he's controlling the energy in the scene.
You nailed it.
If you're directing and acting at the same time, your job is to control the energy in that scene. And when he was acting with the girl, there was no energy. It was two characters standing there saying their lines back and forth. There was nothing.
They looked like an afterthought to me.
I felt differently. I felt as though that contrast between that mundane life, I mean, we can judge it as mundane and boring, but I mean, I think part of him was just loved violence, but I think he did love her, and he did want to just have this basic domestic feel-good situation, and it's just ripped away from him. So I think that makes it.
He wasn't directing. He was acting. He wasn't directing, and he was just saying the lines back and forth. There was no real intimacy or anything really domestic or
He
sweet
was
about
actually
it.
better
Was
in those scenes than he was.
dramatically, it was just dead.
Yeah. Plot
I'm
wise,
not arguing with Henry about, the value of a scene like that.
no. I mean, the idea of having those bucolic scenes, they are completely fine with me. Is the way they appeared in the movie.
Yeah.
I actually didn't find him really passionate about her.
It took me watching the movie a few times to really kind of just go with them, because the very first time I saw it, I felt very similar to what you're describing. So
I also really disliked most of the love scenes in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. One when they're sitting by the tree getting romantic. I thought that was terrible.
I think Peckinpah wasn't really interested in those scenes.
I'm a romantic though. I live for moments like that in violent action movies. I mean, to me, that's part of the arc, but that's just kind of the
well, if you want to see real good romantic violence, see Charlie Varick by Don Siegel.
Wow.
I need to see that. I saw it a while back.
Some real passion in their relationship.
Well, tell you what, guys.
Probably Walter Matthau's towering performance in his career.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Scott, you just saw it recently for the first time, and you threw things at me in text, and I can't see your face either. Now he's hiding altogether. He's running away. Wait.
I'm trying to get I have my laptop in my lap, so I'm moving it to my table.
There he is. So Scott Andrew Hutchins. So what'd you take away from Deadbeat at Dawn?
Yeah, well, at first I was like, okay, this looks like this low budget actioner, and at first I wasn't really impressed with the acting. But as it moved forward, I thought it got better as it moved forward. And I mean, it's still basically just like a chopsocky action film with a lot of extreme violence and stuff, but it's really well done. I mean, obviously the fight scenes are actually impressive, and he there's a lot of putting stuff in the foreground and shooting through that, and I really appreciated that. And some of the performances are very good. I thought Van Bebber was pretty good for most of the film. Like I said, it did seem a little lame at the beginning, and some of the line readings sometimes they had like a bad community theater feel, but that wasn't the majority of the film. I really thought that the way the father bugged out was just a really good performance.
That guy was a trip.
His performance was excellent. It was strange and funny and scary all at the same time.
And pathetic and sad too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's segue into the last part since we've nailed most of this. So this is the Deadbeat at Dawn Blu-ray that Era Video put out a couple of years ago, and this basically upgrades and updates and includes most of the material from the Synapse DVD that I had years ago. Though there was a Dark Sky DVD which had some different material, but I haven't researched it enough. But I will say that I found out talking, I think, to Sean, that there was a couple of shots that weren't in the Synapse that were cut for some reason, and that were in the Dark Sky, which I haven't seen, but they're in this one. So I don't have the Synapse anymore to compare, but this is the fully uncut one, and Arrow did a great job. It really, I've complimented them on this before. They're really good with retaining film texture, and making it as close to an experience as you're going to get. We'll have that long debate on another episode. But, the whole thing, film versus, not in this case, not film versus video. It was shot on film, but film and how it's processed on the Blu-ray, and what you may gain or lose or change or whatever. But that's a far-ranging thing. But for this one, I thought, compared to other prints I've seen of it, and my kind of liminal knowledge of how those kind of movies looked when I was a kid, my parents would sneak me into the theater. I thought it came as close to that as you're going to get on Blu-ray. So I loved it, and there's tons of material. There's a Deadbeat Forever, which is basically his whole life story. It's got chunks of his short films from when he was a kid. It doesn't have any whole films from that early period, except in the next extra part where you've got all the short films that he, wanted to promote and are in there. So the first one's Into the Black from 1982, and it's basically just like him and his buddies doing the kung fu, and here's Hero once again. He gets like a throwing star in his eye or whatever, falls down, he's in pain, but then he gets back up and he's killing everybody. But there's some, he was really young then and in really good shape. I mean, even more than Deadbeat. And so he's just like bouncing off the ground, and you can tell, and you look at his room and also in some of the scenes of him as a kid, because they said like he was a real preppy kid, and they show him like that, like when he was like 10, 11, but he's always into movies. As soon as he got a camera, he went crazy. But then when he started getting into, like, as Sean pointed out, Black Sabbath and a lot of other underground stuff, and then into the martial arts stuff, I mean, he just soaked it up, like a sponge. And a lot of people from that period in his life, some of whom later worked in his movies, some didn't, have commentary. And Jim himself is very genial, and it's a really well cut. It's an hour and a half. It's really well cut because not only does it go through a lot of the stuff Bill said, that whole history, but then it kind of doesn't go deep into the Manson family because that's like its own kind of thing. Hard to explain, but that's his own other big feature. His biggest feature, arguably, as far as ambition and budget, but it has its own special editions and its own kind of tale to tell, I guess you could say. This was kind of concentrated on him in general, and with Deadbeat at Dawn being kind of the locus point, to the point where once you get past what's he been doing the last few years, you see shooting footage for a sequel called Day of the Deadbeat, which obviously both of these titles are takeoffs on George Romero's movies of the dead. And that's the theme, actually, is that Goose has somehow been mystically resurrected 30 years later. And the way he handles it is pretty cool. It's very knowing, and I really think he's kind of commenting on his own aging and also like the damage he did to his body doing all those stunts. And so there's like a kind of a self-awareness. Like he looks at his hand and they quickly shoot to where his fingers get cut off in the original. And then he's just like, are they really there? It's like, am I really alive? So I don't know how he's going to dig into the mystical thing. I told you guys my theory last time. Maybe we'll get into that sometime, but I hope they use at least that same basic idea, because there is an occult idea. There is an idea of fate and curses and life for life in the first one. It's just one of the many things that's not beating you in the head, but is absolutely there as part of the plot. And I hope he springs off of that into this. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know when he's going to finish it. He has maybe 25 usable minutes shot, at least as of 3 years ago or whatever when this came. And there's the usual suspects of his short films. There's like My Sweet Satan, the most infamous one, which is about Ricky Casso, a real life redneck metalhead Satanist, the kind that generally are an urban myth in a lot of parts of the country, but there are some, and he was one. And because the redneck metalhead Satanists I met didn't kill cats or their friends or any of this shit. They just listened to really loud music and talked about how much they love Satan and Red Anton LaVey. But these guys are too stupid to even understand Anton LaVey. These were real people, and he changed their last names. Ricky Casso had a phrase he said to people in his gang, like, say you love Satan. And so there was a famous true crime book called that. And Ricky in the movie, with a different last name that begins with a K, played by Van Bebber, he does say that to his victims, say you love Satan. And he mainly does it to one of his friends who he just on an impromptu acid trip tortures and murders. And it's like, Jesus, And so they changed it to My Sweet Satan for the movie. It had a big reputation. And then he did one called Roadkill: Last Days of John Martin, which is really just kind of an exercise in a real quick kind of gore splatter movie following this kind of, I don't want to say brain dead, like not an idiot, but just kind of like, maybe it was the acting. It was just this purposeless serial killer. He wasn't terrible, the actor, but he didn't have any charisma either. So it was kind of banal, but I think he wanted to work that kind of shit out of his system, and he really didn't do a movie that wall-to-wall gore ever after that. He just incorporated gore. And then years later, he did one called Gator Green, which was going to be a feature. Ended up just with the 16 minutes he shot. That's from like the 2010s, and that's on here. And I had mixed feelings about it. I didn't like any of the characters, really. Maybe 1v1. Maybe that's the point. It definitely reflects a shift in his lifestyle, maybe more of a kind of a harsher, like right-wing kind of redneckish direction, which a lot of fans of that kind of stuff, like guys I know, like the band Anti-Scene, have gone gradually in that direction.
You might mention that the lifestyle change was leaving Hollywood and moving to Florida.
Yeah, I think in Florida, in one sense, his mind got sharper, but in another sense, it got duller. And the audio commentary is a good example, because he's kind of like, it lacks some of the controlled kind of, it's not as erudite as his early speeches where he's just smoking weed and he's like, yeah, man, so I got this shot like this. I'm like, and the commentary is like, yeah, dude, and then when you did this, it's like, I get it, he's with his friend, he's excited, but it doesn't make you go, oh, well, so you just have to look at the work itself. But at least you hear some funny stories. So there's that commentary. And then there's some music videos, and some of them are really bad. They didn't include the more high-end ones he did, like for Skinny Puppy, maybe for copyright reasons, but they did have one big band, Pantera, and it was the worst. It's the worst thing I've seen filmed by him. I mean, it was obviously shot on low-end video. Pantera did not have a good sound system, and he didn't like it very well. And they look like they're having a great time, Pantera, but more like a joke band. Like, we're having a great time. We know we can't play. We're shit. We're just having fun. So you wouldn't know, like a year or two later, boom, they're like huge metal bands. But that was interesting. So, and then there's some weird advertisements and some other weird promotional shit he did for people, some of which footage he's able to incorporate into Day of the Deadbeat. That's just weird, funny stuff. But I think he's a force to be reckoned with still. He mainly works with Unearthed. He's worked on their movies, and it's kind of a waste, because, I mean, I know he needs the money and they're his friends and he likes the work. But I personally don't like the work. I've reviewed the work on this channel. I didn't like American Guinea Pig, Bouquet of Blood and Gore, which he was the cinematographer of. And there's a little bit of that in the documentary of him working on that. And I didn't like the Song of Solomon that Biro directed, that he played this priest in. I get what Biro's trying to do, and that's fine, but that's really just for his audience. And I get that Van Bebber is a fan of that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really.
What kind of stuff?
It's just, I mean, Song of Solomon is an exorcism movie, and Biro kept, promoting it as like the most accurate, the most grueling exorcism scene. So, they take ideas from a lot of the real life grueling ones, like the Annalise girl in Germany, of course, being the famous example. But really, it's like a magical, supernatural kind of thing. It has to be, because basically, she's using the power of her mind and shit to just completely fuck with people's bodies and make them mutilate themselves. And they're still alive. They're still conscious. This is the thing in horror movies. I think a lot of horror movies love the idea that a person can be, completely mutilated and still be conscious and aware. And that's the biggest torture. But, in real life, 9 out of 10 of these people would have keeled over after you chopped their arm off, but not in movies. So they zip it up and keep guiding. But
well, it's like in this one where they rip Chrissy's guts out, and there's looks like snakes coming out of her body.
But she actually died. That's the thing. That was realistic. But
yeah,
in Song of Solomon, like the Bebber plays a priest, and it's not terrible, but it's not convincing either. I think he's trying to make the character kind of boring because he sees religious people as boring. but it really kind of takes an edge off his performance. And so even though he's the good guy, you really don't care, but you kind of have to care because he is the best actor and the only character in the movie that is good at all. And he gets fucked up, and most of it is while he's still alive. Like he rips his eyeballs out, slowly screaming. And of course, I mean, when I have severe allergies in my eyes, man, and they get teared up and they hurt, man, I'm freaking out. I can imagine losing your eyeballs, much less like that. He doesn't act like he's in pain. He's just being dramatic, you know. But I don't blame him. I blame Vero because that's what Vero wanted. So if he can make money working with Vero to funnel back into Day of the Deadbeat, I'm all for it. So that's kind of how things stand at the moment, I guess. So I think we did a good run through. So I'll continue pretending it's the episode itself.
What about Justin?
Yeah, well, I was going to say I've explained to Henry because I've had a few issues last couple of weeks. I had a chance to actually watch the film, but I'd looked at the preview and I've just been flicking through some photos. So, and after I've heard what you had to say, sort of thing I might actually like to watch. I think, but I'm attracted to the idea that it's got this non-formulaic, non-Hollywood type ending, and I compare this to a film I love, which I watched last Friday night at this old Art Deco cinema I go to, called Scarface, the Al Pacino film. And I know that Tony Montana is not really a hero, of course, he's more of an anti-hero, but he does have a moral side to him that some of the people he associates with didn't have. But he has a very destructive end, or a very destructive last, say, 40 minutes of the film. And it all ends in a big gory type shootout at the end, as you know, and he comes to no good end at the end of the film. But so I think that's certainly a non-formulaic film. And we're very lucky to have Stephen Bauer appear at the Astor Theatre in Melbourne for Q&A prior to the film's screening, 40th anniversary screening. And interesting, he said that although he and Pacino loved the film, they were quite irritated at the time when the film was released in 1983 that the critics panned the film, including even Pacino's performance. And it may have been possibly because they saw it as a nihilistic type film with maybe too much violence. And Pacino said to Stephen Bauer at the time, "Don't let it get to you. It's nothing personal. The critics are just trying to make a name for themselves by see who can make the most outrageous comment." So
I think a lot of that hostility towards the film was that it was being sold as a remake of Scarface and had nothing to do with the original Scarface.
Yeah, only a couple of basic skeletal plot.
It's like, what the hell are you doing? You're remaking a classic and it's just a bunch of violent shit, you know.
Yeah, but now no one remembers the
It's a very stylistic film too, though, with the George Moroder soundtrack.
But they didn't really see the movie on its own terms.
You know, I like the original Scarface a lot. I love the Jojo Moroder music. It is very 80s, but it's very, I think that movie from beginning.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it has a lot of energy to it. It's just like, it's a really long movie and it could have drug, but between the performances and the music and of course De Palma's usual kind of camera
can I pitch in a little bit? I think I love Scarface, but at the same time I don't. It's gonna sound like I'm putting it down, but I'm not. Okay. I see it. I think it's completely unbelievable, and that's not a bad thing. I see it as a graphic novel done live action. For instance,
it's operatic.
The whole thing is very.
Stone intended it to be operatic.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely overblown, and it's great, but it's completely overblown. You know, it's kind of. I don't buy Pacino for 1 second as the Cuban bad guy, but I could watch that performance 50 times more.
You know who I think he pulled that kind of an accent off, in my opinion, really well, was to me the last great movie, in my opinion, he did with De Palma, which is Carlito's Way.
Wow, yeah, I think but Carlito's Way is way more subdued.
I know it is, and that's what I'm saying. It's more.
Yeah, it's more realistic. It's more a more realistic approach. But I love Scarface. I actually only seen the Paul Muni version once, but I saw the De Palma, Stone, Pacino version probably 7 times.
That movie has so much talent. You could call it the Pacino, Stone, De Palma, Alonso, Moroder, Bauer.
Oh yeah,
Like everybody
was
incredible.
Bauer, Pfeiffer,
John Alonso,
and
yeah.
But I mean, it's just like I don't buy it, and that's not a bad thing. The same way that just to make a wild comparison here, I love Godfather, the first one. I love it, but I don't buy the Brando for 1 second. He looks too young. It's a very comic book, his approach to the character, and it's weird because it's in a different tone than the other characters, but at the same time, don't ask me why, I like it. And it's kind of like when Pacino is with the other characters in the car, I buy them all. But it seems to me like he came from a different movie and decided I'm gonna steal every scene here.
Well, he had one thing. He had one barometer of authenticity going against him, which is that Stephen Bauer is Cuban.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, I love the movie. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I really love the movie. Really love the movie.
I can't see your face though. I can't see your face. I can't see your face.
Oh, you
just try to be more mindful of that stuff when we're recording.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Basic direction.
Actually, that movie, Scarface, and The Fury. Okay, and also, I really like The Fury also. I think they're and Body Double, in my opinion, are if somebody wants to know what is Brian De Palma all about, I would say he's the biggest exploitation director. He does exploitation movies with a budget, with eight class budgets. But
I have gradually fallen in love with him because I only liked like every other movie of his growing up.
But I'm not saying the one that's.
I like almost all of his filmography now. Now there's some later ones I really hate, but I mean, he was on a roll in the '70s and up to Scarface at least. I mean, you know.
I mean, he's shameless, and I like him for it.
Right.
For blonde is like, and so what, and so freaking what?
Oh, Phantom of the Paradise.
Let's torture the guy. Okay, how about with a chainsaw? And it's like, and he's shameless, and I applaud him for that.
Well, that was also kind of the beginning of what we were talking about earlier, where you can't kill the main character; they get injured, and it's not realistic. And of course, who made that super famous was John Woo. John Woo took the end of Scarface and those last 10 minutes and made it like half of the movie of the killer, and they're still getting shot. And they're like, "Come on, brother!" And of course, ultimately, that's from Peckinpah. But I think Scarface helped. That he had that one guy, like you were saying, he's got like his will. He's going to keep going, and he's like, just come on, try to kill me. You can't kill me, and but everyone falls.
And I think Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, she's superb in the movie. She looks great. Also,
she does look great, and that's the only plot point really from the original movie that's in the movie.
And Alonso, as you said, is great in the movie.
Did you say you saw Newman who played his sister, right?
Yeah, Mastrantonio plays.
Yeah, she's cool.
Al Pacino's sister. Yeah. And
Okay,
I really like the movie.
It's very sad what happened to her in the film, I thought, but that's the one character you really feel sorry for in the film.
He really loses his fucking mind, Tony. I mean, once he does that, I'm just like, dude, come on. You want everybody to hate you, like everybody, and he doesn't give a fuck, And
I think
we broke the cardinal rule of becoming addicted to the stock that they were dealing with. I think, but that's what happened. Yeah.
Don't get high your own supply.
And the same material.
Yeah, that's it. Your own supply.
If the same screenplay had been directed by any other director, I think chances would be people at the audience would be laughing at the screen. But
I think the only director who could have pulled it off besides De Palma was Stone himself.
Yeah,
I think Stone himself.
I completely agree with you.
Well,
I think anybody else would be like, gosh, who would be snorting that much cocaine? I mean, it's like an Everest.
Who was that you said,
cocaine. Huh? What?
Who was the other director you mentioned that could have done it?
Oliver Stone.
Oh,
Yeah. He himself, I think, could have directed it in a fascinating way. But, he did a ton of cocaine for that research for that screenplay.
That's right. Yeah, he wrote the screenplay.
In my opinion, the movie walks like a real thin line between being almost like a self-parody. But thank God, it never ends being that. It's just like really straightforward, and we have this overblown idea, concept, and let's shameless. Let's be brave, never look back.
Yeah, it just does what it wants to do, and I always like that about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start getting toward the wrap up. So I was just gonna my closing things are, now all about Deadbeat at Dawn, and we'll be covering a lot of other movies like that, a lot of movies nothing like that, pretty much any genre doesn't matter. There's no like we won't cover low budget movies or we won't cover superhero movies. Though some of you guys might not all be on that panel, but that's okay. Or we won't cover Hollywood movies, but I won't cover movies like say Titanic or The Lion King. I have to draw the line somewhere. To me, those are bad.
Right.
But but anything non-mainstream and or classic or cult, same thing I've been doing on Blue Review, but now we're just going to expand it and have a lot more points of view. Please subscribe because the algorithms are brutal. And if we can get 1,000 subscriptions, the channel can begin to become monetized. And please drop a like. Because the more likes, the more you'll see it, the more it'll get recommended. And so we'll be back with some other stuff soon. We're not on a fixed schedule.
Don't you guys forget, just like Henry described us, we are neat people. So
what?
No, Henry said at the beginning that when you were telling about the idea of having this whole podcast, you said, I chose a lot of people with different opinions and they were neat people. So I love that. So we are neat.
I like perspectives. I like personalities, and I like people I can get along with, work with. So
I've been called many things in my life, but never neat, and I appreciate it very much.